Holy cow, I can't believe this actually happened. A lot of us had pretty much given up hope that one of the main Japanese titans of power sports would release a performance side-by-side with some horsepower. A lot of us had basically all but given up hope, but that has changed. Kawasaki's launched a brand new H2 Sport Teryx side-by-side. Let's chat about it. Hey everybody, it's Nick Olson, Chupacabra Offroad. Welcome back to the channel. And from the get-go, the name of this new machine, the H2, is from the Performance Ninja sport bike that they've been making with the H2 motor, which has a ridiculous power to weight ratio. So let's start off with some of the specs, talking about, of course, the powertrain and the power to weight ratio. So the H2 is a 4-cylinder 999cc inline 4, and that's making 250 horsepower through the supercharger and also putting out 146 foot-pounds of torque at 8,800 RPM. It does so with 4 40-millimeter throttle bodies. And I mentioned weight. They're boasting a power to weight ratio of 9.4 pounds per horsepower, which is also industry leading compared to the competitors, the Polaris Pro R, the Can-Am Maverick R. So it's a couple hundred pounds lighter than the competition, and it's slightly above those in terms of horsepower. So right out of the gate, they're hitting you with some interesting numbers. Some other numbers I found interesting that I really liked are the width and the length. So the length of this machine is 126 inches long, which is about identical to the current KRX 4C 1000. But this became wider than the KRX 1000, which is 68. This is 6 inches wider, 74 inches. So nice numbers. As the vehicle got wider, it also gained more suspension travel. So the KRX 1000 has 18 and 21 inches of travel, where this has more travel at 23 inches in the front, 24 in the rear. So heavier, of course, but quite a bit more power. Some great numbers. It's shorter than the competitors' units, wheelbase-wise, which is something that most people, like myself, have always touted as being a great characteristic. And 74 puts it on par width-wise of the Polaris Pro R. So it's right in the mix with all the competitors. Another stat that's also in the mix, it comes stock with 33-inch tires. So that's a little bit taller than the 32 spec'd on Polaris and Can-Am, and it does so on some 16-inch wheels. One other quick comparison I noticed, it's got a 14.8 gallon fuel tank, which is 1.5 gallons bigger than the Maverick R. So even if this thing is thirsty, on paper it looks like you should be able to get a 100-mile range out of this thing in the performance driving mode, which is harder to do. You know, these performance side-by-sides like my Pro R, they're awesome, but they do drink a lot of gas, so it's nice to see that they went with a pretty good sized fuel cell. So new, different type of way to make horsepower than what we've seen from the competitors. Comment below if you've driven a side-by-side with a supercharger. Superchargers are known on a different characteristic. According to Kawasaki, inline 4s are known for a smooth, high revving power. Since the supercharger is driven by the engine rather than exhaust gas, Kawasaki claims the H2 does not have a lag associated with a turbocharger and benefits from strong instant acceleration. So pretty cool with the options that we have these days, and this will, I'm sure, have a little bit different characteristic than the competitors' units. So exciting to see another option, and I mentioned 8,800 RPM. Of course, that's driven through a CVT transmission. So I know some of you guys love geared transmissions, and I want to comment on it in a second because I just took a trip to Coos Bay, and I got to drive my buddy Frank G from G Life. Awesome YouTube channel, check it out. But he let me drive his fully dialed in Mavar before he had his accident. And man, to get to drive a 7-speed transmission, he had extra power thrown at it, the shift kit, all that type of stuff. It was an extremely fun experience. It was different, right? It's hard to say it's better on this channel. If you guys have followed me for a while, you know how much I love a CVT drivetrain. I love my Pro R. The power is there right when I need it. It's instant, and I can focus on driving. But I know a lot of people love the geared transmission and love that visceral connection to the machine. And I want to use an analogy for all you dirt bike riders of a 2-stroke versus a 4-stroke. I ride 4-stroke dirt bikes. I have a hard time riding 2-strokes. They're harder to ride. I can ride a 4-stroke faster, and for me, that's more fun. But a lot of people love 2-strokes, not necessarily because they can put out the fastest lap time, but because they have some characteristics that just make you smile when you ride them. And I'm the same way when I do get to ride a 2-stroke. They just smile. There's just some things and some nuances about them that are fun. They're generally lighter. The power explodes when it does, and being able to control a 2-stroke is definitely an art form. And I bring that up because now we've got a different type of power characteristic, and some people love Can-Am and or Polaris, which is better. There's just some different characteristics, and maybe your end goal is driving as fast as you possibly can. Maybe it's just that connectedness or being able to shift gears. There's a lot of different ways that we can kind of determine what we like, and I think Kawasaki will probably be a different flavor of ice cream from what it seems like on paper, and we'll find out when we get to drive this thing. But it's cool that they went about making power in a different way, and of course, went through the heritage of their Ninja, and that makes it extra exciting because I'm sure the amount of intelligence, all the learnings, the power, performance are going to be exciting once you get behind the wheel of this thing. Okay, so if this H2 ends up being fast, just as fast than the competitors, it's going to need to slow down. I'm actually really obsessed with braking right now on all my toys, my bicycles, motorcycles, side-by-sides. A couple of years ago, back in 2023, after purchasing a Speed UTV, that came equipped with the worst brakes I've ever experienced on a stock side-by-side. And even after spending almost $4,000 to upgrade to their Willwood performance brakes, they still weren't as good as the brakes on my current vehicle, which is a 2025 Pro R. I love being able to slow down, being able to control the vehicle. The Pro R is a bigger, heavier machine. I can run 35-inch tires, and the brakes have a ton of power to slow me down, to give me confidence, to push hard, that I can brake late if I need to, if I don't anticipate how tight a turn is. It is a big game changer, and I feel like a lot of the UTV community doesn't really talk about brakes, but Kawasaki has spec'd this machine with 270 millimeter rotors with dual piston calipers. They look pretty big and beefy, and maybe that's why all of the models, which we'll talk about here in a second, are spec'd with 16-inch wheels. It might need that space. The 16-inch wheels are something that I'm not that stoked on because the aftermarket's got 15-inch wheel options galore. Of course, the aftermarket will be able to respond quickly. It looks like the 5-lug bolt pattern might be similar to a Pro R, so that might make it a little bit easier. But maybe this vehicle has to run at least 16s because the brakes are big. The rotor size is bigger than a Mav R. They might be the biggest in the industry. I'm not sure on the spec of the Pro R, but hopefully these brakes are as good as the Pro R, which would be a huge win in my opinion, because the stock 33-inch carnivore tires on these will surely be replaced. If I were to buy one, like many of you, I'd put some 35s on the car right away for added ground clearance, better everything, everywhere, because 35s are the holy grail. So stoked to see some good beefy brakes, and I hope that they are on point with Polaris's, because that would be a win. All right, let's get into the models. There's basically 3 models if you want to call it. So starting off with the base model, MSRP is $37,199. It's of course putting out the 250 horse. It has Fox 3.0 internal bypass shocks, 3 adjustable power modes. It has non-beadlock wheels and a pretty bare bones interior. It doesn't even have a roof on it. And then when you upgrade and spend an additional $6,000, you bump up to the H2 Deluxe ES. That's $43,199, and if you want to spend another $500, you can make it a 5-seater. So another industry first, from the factory, legal 5-seat vehicle. If you have 3 kids, it's pretty sweet. A lot of people over the years have done that and put benches in the back of their old Razor 900s, Razor 1000s, turbos. And it's a question that always comes up. There's a lot of you that have more than 2 kids or just want that extra seat. And here's another graphic I caught off of Kawasaki's website. I love looking at it because on paper, I'm looking, okay, 126 wheelbase. How are you gonna fit 5 people in it comfortably? What's the leg room like? Is it as good as a Pro R? Can it be with the shorter wheelbase? And I love how they kind of give you a real world, hey, this is what it looks like with 2 people who are 5 and 11 up front and 5'3" in the rear. You know, commonly most of us are just gonna have smaller kid passengers in the rear, but you could make it work with some taller teenagers, maybe even adults if you had to. So pretty cool. But getting back to the Deluxe ES model for $6,000, you're gonna get an upgrade to Fox live valve suspension. And similar to Polaris, there are several sensors and inputs that adjust on the fly, braking, turning, that type of thing. Kawasaki has a whole word salad on their website where they're talking about all the technology that they get into, rake and yaw and these technical terms that are way above my head. But there's a lot that they've learned, similar to Polaris with their Dynamics DV, where they're taking the orientation of what the vehicle's doing, braking, accelerating, cornering, and adjusting the suspension on the fly for maximum control, performance, and all those type of things. So that's pretty cool. You also get high back bucket seats, 4-point seat belts. I think these things look great. I love having the hole cutouts, because it always puts a real 4-point harness, which I put in all my cars, in the spot right above your shoulders, right where they need to be. So that's pretty cool. The seats look fantastic. They look as high quality as anything aftermarket. So that's pretty cool. 4-point seat belts are also included in this Deluxe EX package, which look pretty good. So that's pretty cool. And then another big thing a lot of you guys are gonna like is a big 10-inch Garmin infotainment GPS. That's the key word these days, is infotainment. And I've had a Garmin tread in my Speed. I just purchased one for my Pro R we'll be installing, and Garmin's really got some cool products. I'm a fan of the watch for my cycling. Garmin's GPS stuff is I think industry leading, and the screen clarity of the Garmin that I purchased is the most easy to see in the dust. So I think this is going to be a cool setup. 10-inch here in the center. Of course, you're going to get a roof, you're going to get beadlock wheels for an additional $6,000, and a lot of other little storage compartments here we'll talk about in a second. So storage compartments leads into the interior. One thing I've talked a lot about on this channel that gets brought up on the showroom floor is fit and finish. It's a big thing. These have a price point to these modern side-by-sides. People expect a car-like quality, and it's looking like the Kawasaki H2 here is delivering on a much higher level of fit and finish than we've seen on their side-by-side line. You know, the KRX a lot of people love, but it's pretty simplistic. This is not. To me, just looking at photos, I mean, the D-shaped steering wheel, you've got your adjustable suspension modes on it. Your front main display here has all kinds of data, which power mode you're driving in. It also has a belt temp sensor as well as a belt temp light. So that's a nice feature that people used to have to spend money to upgrade to see what their belt temperature was doing. They've got their own app. Remains to be seen how well that will work out in the wild when you don't have service. But I would hope that with the Garmin GPS, you've got some GPS technology where you can have some maps pulled up no matter where you are. I think that's one thing that Polaris does exceptionally well that Can-Am is lacking even on their Mav-R. Another thing that Polaris I think leads the industry in is their ride command, and then having multiple people on ride command show up as dots. So, you know, Polaris sets a high bar, and this Cowie, I'm not sure if it'll match it. We will see. But to me, the dash layout looks big. A 10-inch screen I think is industry leading, and there's a lot of information that you need. One thing I learned that I think is an incredible little bell and whistle, you've got some cameras, and the cameras have a zoom in mode. So, I mean, incredibly thoughtful. I don't think I've ever seen that before. And even this photo here, these switches look really nice with the LED around them. There's a lot of details that seem to be adding up quickly and look like Kawasaki's been extremely thoughtful. I mentioned storage. There's cup holders in the rear. There's little storage cubbies behind the front seats. As much storage they could try to cram into this thing, whether it's something small enough like a snack or sunblock. They tried to do their best. The rear, it's hard to tell how big the storage compartment is in it. It looks to be maybe smaller, we'll see, but of course the aftermarket will be jumping on board with some storage, because big 4-seater, 5-seater, you gotta have snacks for all those little kids. You guys know the drill, all the stuff. So good job on the interior. The inner doors look amazing. It appears that the fit and finish is exceptional and a huge step up from anything we've seen from any Japanese OEM side-by-side. Speaking of appearance, one thing I need to see in real life is what looks to be more of a boat side to the lower portion of the doors. It looks like there is a little bit of a narrow. The boat side is something that's been common in specific rock crawl vehicles. You see a lot of people build boat sides into custom UTVs that race King of Hammers. And I hope this is the truth. Kawasaki has an amazing reputation in the rocks. I've talked about it a lot. Of course, in southern Utah, you see a lot of them. And it definitely appears that it does have a boat side or additional clearance here. Check out this graphic where they kind of pointed out. And it appears that they've tried to optimize clearance as much as they could on the trailing arms, the rear radius rods, and the front A-arms. So that's cool. That, again, is more details that Kawasaki is trying to consider everything. And then also, pointing out to their community, to their loyalists right now of what they love the machine for. I think the boat sides are especially important in a 2-seat vehicle where, you're going through these 7 and 8 rated trails in San Paulo like we have and put on our channel, Moab, other areas. People love the Kawasaki for that. So if this optimizes their clearance, they already have the tallest tire stock of any other side-by-side, and makes you think with 35s, this thing and the shorter wheelbase, this thing is gonna continue Kawasaki's legacy of being incredible on the rocks. Excited to drive one of these things. Of course, I love to geek out on suspension and handling, and we're not gonna know until we get some miles on that thing in multiple conditions. One thing I will say to Kawasaki's credit is the KRX has had a great reputation for a good handling machine. A lot of that could have been attributed to that it was a heavier vehicle and didn't have a lot of horsepower, but the geometry was always noted to be good and predictable and have just great characteristics. So hopefully Kawasaki continue with the legacy on that. That's probably what I'm most interested to learn about this machine, but again, until we drive it, we can't comment on it. So fingers crossed the Kawasaki kept with that reputation with great handling, because everything I just mentioned, you know, we need to see some high level handling to make the whole package come together. Overall, my first impression, just looking off of the website, it looks incredibly impressive. I think Kawasaki has looked at a lot of different elements of the vehicle and tried to tie in everything that they could have. But we'll see. Of course, we're going to try to get our hands on one of these and take it for a test drive. And the real answer will be after hundreds and thousands of you purchase these things and run them in the wild to see how reliable, how it stacks up performance-wise, and all these type of things. All we can really do is on these first videos is look at the numbers and speculate. But I definitely think there's a lot of good ingredients when you look at the numbers. I think there look to be a lot of good details that people are going to be pleased with, how it's going to look and feel to own as it compares to competitors on the showroom floor. I think there's an extremely talented team that put this together. Like I said, Kawasaki, I mean, I started off the video with my excitement of these Japanese brands that I had the excitement being a longtime two-wheel guy. We were raised on you know, dirt bikes, ATVs that set that standard for us of reliability, performance, and Kawasaki's just got this amazing heritage for that. So it's cool to see that finally come over to the side-by-side, in my opinion, because it needed the horsepower to compete with the mighty titans, the Ford and Chevy of the sport, being Can-Am and Polaris, of course. So we have a big player. I think it's for real. I'm a little surprised we haven't seen a two-seater. I hope to see one of those in the next 4 to 6 months. One would have to think with all this development, they've got it ready to go. They just looked at their numbers and thought, hey, we're gonna launch this thing in the Southwest. You know, this price point, obviously the 4-seat models, especially in the Southwest, rule the roost. But one would have to think there's a big market for people who would be excited about a 2-seat version. So that was a bit of a head scratcher. Design-wise, also too, my final thought, you know, they've teased the silhouette of this machine, and you know, car companies, truck companies, they always tease a concept car or a concept drawing, and it looks so cool and futuristic. And then by the time it comes out to production, it just doesn't look nearly as cool. It looks a little more watered down, but I think they've done a great job of delivering the roof line, the way it ties in with the body panels in the rear, to me just has that cool concept car look to it. I think the side of the vehicle looks great. I think the door lines and everything look fantastic. The front, not the prettiest to me, but it still kind of has that classic Kawasaki, so has the KRX look. So I get that they're tying in that similar brand. It looks a little better with the bigger hood scoop. But the seats too are another item where it almost looks like they're out of a concept car, and I'm kind of surprised they're stock. So it looks like it's got a really high-end look and style, and it didn't detract too much from the concept of it. So that gives, I gotta give a double thumbs up for that, because that's just cool, and that's something I don't think we see every day in the automotive world, UTV world in general. So Kawasaki's here, stoked to see one of these things in real life. It might be the Sand Show. I'm not sure if dealers will get some soon. Comment below. We'll update as we get more information, of course, on our social. Get behind the wheel, comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the Kawi. Are you considering buying one of these things? Thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you on the next one.